Before we start, make sure to smash that like button, drop a comment telling us what alien pet you'd trust to guard your farm, and subscribe for more human frontier stories that prove humanity's spirit always finds a way, even in the farthest stars. Now let's dive in. Owen had never liked being watched, but he'd learned to tolerate it when the alien merchants came trudging up the dusty slope in the late morning haze. Their shapes were sharp against the pale violet sky, long cloaks fluttering behind them, feet cracking against the dry crust of reddish soil that stretched in every direction like an endless ocean. Owen had been up before dawn as always, turning the irrigation valves and checking the electric fences, his breath ghosting under the chilly breeze. By the time the first alien shadows reached the gate, he had already finished feeding the quarry beasts and returned to the side paddock, whistling a soft, tuneless melody only he and the big creature beside him seemed to understand. They always started the same way. Virak, with his long narrow snout and thin crown horns polished to a dark sheen, would lead. He would spread his four-fingered hands as though he came in peace, though his eyes always glittered with private jokes he never shared out loud. Behind him, Gar followed like a loyal hound, shoulders broad and armor half-buckled even in peacetime, always tapping the hilt of his blade as if he were daring someone to question his courage. Virak called out first, his accent thick and drawn, every word dripping in slow mockery. "Owen, your monster's still alive, I see. Not taken your head off in the night yet?" His laughter rose high and brittle like breaking glass. Gar joined in, barking a guttural noise that passed for a laugh among his kind. Owen didn't bother turning fully. He simply shifted his hat lower over his eyes and flicked his hand to scatter another handful of feed across the dirt. Beside him the creature, Rex, lifted his head. A massive, reptilian beast with scales like dark basalt and eyes like twin embers, he moved with a deceptive calm that made even the toughest mercenaries fidget. He was born to dominate, an apex predator built by eons of evolution on this planet to hunt anything that dared cross his domain. Yet here he was, nudging Owen's shoulder with the careful nudge of a working dog, as if asking if he could continue. Owen let out a low chuckle and shook his head. "Easy now, big boy. Let them talk." He shifted the feed bucket to his other arm and looked up at the aliens. "Morning, Virak." "Gar. Fine day to waste time mocking a man's work, isn't it?" Gar took a step forward, metal plates rattling, his nostrils flaring. "Work? You mean playing nursemaid to a death lizard? You humans truly are insane. Back home, we hunt such beasts for sport, mount their heads over our halls." His hand jerked toward Rex, but even that slight motion made Rex's tail flick, an arc of muscle capable of snapping a tree trunk. Gar stilled immediately, the sweat darkening his tunic at the throat. Virak leaned against the fence, clicking his teeth. "Why waste your life here, human? You could sell that creature for a fortune on the war markets. Instead, you herd grass-eaters and let him rot behind this fence." His voice lowered into a conspiratorial purr. "Or are you hiding from something, perhaps? A failed warrior? A deserter?" Owen set the bucket down slowly, dust kicking up around his boots. He stood, back straight, shoulders broad beneath the worn linen shirt patched so many times it looked like a tapestry. His face bore deep lines from years of sun and wind, and his eyes, gray and steady, gave nothing away. Rex pressed closer, a low rumble in his throat. Owen reached up and patted the thick scales of his snout, fingers tracing old scar lines hidden under the armor like hide. "I came here to grow things," Owen finally said, each word heavy but calm. "Came to be left alone. That's all there is to it." He bent down again, scooping another handful of feed, and scattered it as though nothing more needed saying. Rex lowered his head too, mirroring the motion, eyes still locked on Gar with that uncanny intensity. The quarry beasts shuffled nervously at the far end of the paddock, long-necked, woolly creatures with curved spines like coiled springs. They recognized Rex, understood the silent dominion he carried, and obeyed his movements without sound. When Owen snapped his fingers twice and whistled low, Rex bounded forward with graceful power, circling wide and cutting the herd into tidy lines. The quarry beasts formed orderly rows, each animal responding to Rex's shifting presence as though drawn by an invisible string. Virak snorted, disgust curling his lips. "A monstrous shepherd," he spat. "You humans keep surprising us. You love taming death, wearing it like a badge. It will betray you one day, mark my words." Owen said nothing. He watched Rex finish the circuit, the herd now clustered neatly near the irrigation trough. Rex paused and glanced back, eyes softening when Owen gave a short thumbs up. In that moment, any observer might have mistaken Rex for a loyal farm dog rather than the planet's deadliest native predator. Gar shook his head, disgusted. "Waste of flesh and fong," he grunted, turning back toward the footpath. Virak followed, clicking his tongue. "We'll be back to collect your head when the beast finally snaps," he called over his shoulder. His voice was thick with self-satisfaction, as though he had delivered the final blow in some private game. As the two aliens shrank into the distance, Owen sighed, picking up the bucket again and brushing loose grains from his palms. Rex returned to his side, mouth slightly open in a toothy grin, breath steaming in the morning chill. Owen dropped a few chunks of dried meat into the waiting jaws, and Rex closed his eyes, savoring each bite as delicately as a cat with cream. "You know," Owen murmured, scratching the wide ridge above Rex's eyes, "they can laugh all they want. You and me were fine right here." Rex leaned into the scratch, making a deep, satisfied rumble that vibrated up through Owen's arm. For a brief second, the world seemed to stop, just the human and his improbable guardian, the sound of the wind threading between the grazing quarry beasts. A small tremor ran through the ground, distant but present enough to catch Rex's attention. He stiffened, head swinging toward the horizon, nostrils flaring as he sampled the air. Owen paused too, frowning at the flat field stretching beyond the property lines. He squinted into the brightening light but saw nothing yet, just the shimmering mirage above the fields. "Easy," Owen said again, voice low but steady. Rex remained tense, muscles coiled beneath the scales. Slowly he settled back, though his yellow eyes kept scanning the line where earth met sky. Owen knew well enough not to dismiss Rex's instincts. Years ago, back when he wore combat armor and roared across starfields with men who had long since turned to dust, he learned to trust the quiet signals. The shift in air pressure, the scent no human could name, the ripple in a predator's bones before a storm. But that part of his life was gone, buried deep beneath layers of soil and sweat and simple routines. He took off his hat and wiped a sleeve across his forehead, feeling the morning warmth begin to build. In the distance, the villagers' domed houses shimmered like lumps of melting glass. Gar's voice still rang in his ears, the scorn heavy as iron. He felt a flicker of old fire stir in his chest, the reflex of a warrior's pride, but he pushed it down with practiced ease. He had nothing to prove to them. Turning, Owen gave Rex another pat and walked to the fence line, checking each post, each solar wire humming with stored sun energy. Rex followed a few paces behind, head swinging from side to side, scanning for threats only he seemed to sense. When they finished the circuit, Owen leaned on the corner post, eyes sweeping across the land that had become his quiet fortress. In the far-off sky, thin silver shapes moved in formation. Merchant shuttles, most likely, or survey drones drifting toward other settlements. Nothing new. Nothing he couldn't handle. Still, he felt Rex's steady breath against his leg, the warmth both a comfort and a subtle reminder that peace here was something he had chosen to grow like a stubborn plant among stones. Owen let out a slow exhale, gaze softening as he watched Rex trot back to nudge the quarry beasts into a looser cluster. The laughter of Virak and Gar faded into memory, like footprints in sand vanishing under a rising tide. What they thought did not matter here. What mattered was that the animals stayed fed, the fences held, and the quiet moments between sunrise and dusk stretched long and gentle. He tipped his hat again, adjusted his tools, and turned back toward the main paddock. The world beyond his fences might be restless, arrogant, hungry for conquest. But here for now it was just him, Rex, and the stubborn rhythm of an honest day's work. And beneath it all, something waited in the soil, in the bones, in the coiled muscle of the predator who chose to stay by his side. Somewhere in that stillness, Owen almost smiled. Rumors always arrived before the trouble itself. They slipped between market stalls and low whispers, hissed through dusty back alleys, and curled around evening fires like smoke. The first hint came from a passing supply driver, a grizzled old trader who looked as though he'd crawled out of a sun-bleached grave. He delivered his crates of mineral supplement and feed, his voice shaking even before his hands did. "They're coming," the trader rasped, looking over his shoulder every few seconds. "Draven war packs. They burned through the north settlements 2 nights ago. Took all the young men. Any male who resisted, gone. Took the animals too." He spat the last word like it burned his tongue. Owen listened in silence, arms crossed, leaning against the edge of his battered cargo hauler. Rex loomed just behind him, peering over the crates, snout twitching as though he, too, understood every word. The trader's eyes darted to Rex, and he stumbled backward, nearly tripping over a half-empty grain sack. "Stars above, why do you even keep that thing alive? You could sell it to the highest warlord and run. They'll come for you first." Owen gave no answer. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, signaling Rex to step back. The great predator obeyed, moving as if on some silent current only he and Owen shared. The traitor scrambled to his vehicle, driving off in a blur of dust and curses, leaving behind the sour tang of fear. Not long after, Gar arrived. He stormed up the path in full armor this time, all gleaming plates and painted clan marks, his blade strapped tight against his back. His breathing was shallow, fast, like a hunted thing. Virak slithered in behind him, less showy, but his dark eyes wide and bright, twitching in every direction. Gar stomped to the fence and slammed a gauntlet fist on the top rail, rattling it. "Human, you hear the word? The Draven are days away. We must gather every able fighter. We need you and that monster." Owen didn't flinch. He stood just inside the paddock, checking the voltage on a fence junction, ignoring the armored alien as though he were a passing bird. Gar's face twisted in frustration. "Owen," he roared again, spit flying. "They will cut your fields to ash. Take your beast and skin it alive. Your herd? Your house? Gone. You think your fences will hold them?" Owen glanced up, his eyes cool and steady. "I'm no longer a soldier," he said, voice low. He flicked a small tool into his palm, adjusted the coil on the electric line and gave it a sharp tap. Sparks popped, a quick blue pulse that danced across the line. Satisfied, he pocketed the tool and started down the fence row, never once looking back at Gar. Virak moved up beside Gar, his voice oily, words sliding out like venom. "Listen to me, Owen. You have power here more than you know. That creature of yours could lead the defense. You'd be a hero again, not some mud-streaked recluse." Owen paused at the corner post. His hand rested on the top rail, fingers splayed as though feeling the pulse of the land itself. His shoulders rose and fell once in a deep, weary sigh. "No," he said without turning. "I chose this life. I chose peace. I won't march again." Gar lunged forward, face contorted in rage. Virak grabbed at his arm, pulling him back before the warrior could vault the fence. Gar snarled, tearing free, metal clanking. "You coward!" Gar roared, fists clenched so tight his gauntlets creaked. "You hide behind a fence and that lizard while your neighbors die. When they come for you, I will not lift a blade to help. I'll watch them tear you apart." Owen looked over his shoulder just once and met Gar's eyes. There was no fury there, no trembling fear, only a steady resignation that rattled Gar more than a drawn blade ever could. Gar faltered, chest heaving, his armor trembling with each breath. Virak tugged at his sleeve again, muttering low words too soft to catch. Finally they turned and stomped off together, leaving the dust to swirl in their wake. When the silence settled again, Owen climbed to the porch, dropping his tools in a rusted bin by the door. He sat on the top step, elbows resting on his knees, head bowed. Rex appeared moments later, lumbering up and settling with a low grunt beside him. The beast laid its massive head on Owen's knee, scales warm and rough beneath his palm. "You feel it too," Owen murmured, fingers drifting along the ridges of Rex's skull. The predator didn't move, except for a faint shiver in the muscles beneath his hide. The sun dipped low, staining the sky in molten orange and bruised purple. From the far fields came a low, shuddering rumble. The ground seemed to breathe, vibrating in short, clipped pulses. Owen straightened, eyes narrowing at the darkening horizon. Small lights winked and bobbed in the distant haze, torches or scout fires, too far to judge clearly yet close enough to churn the pit of his stomach. Inside the house, Owen moved with methodical precision. He drew a battered crate from beneath the floorboards, each movement deliberate, each breath deep and silent. He popped the latches, revealing an array of old gear: a long-barreled plasma rifle, a cracked helmet painted with old battle sigils, a pair of heavy gloves still stained with ash and blood. Then the stars above. He didn't touch the rifle. Instead, he lifted the helmet, turning it in his hands, thumb tracing a faded emblem, an ancient human unit crest, nearly worn away. His eyes softened for a fleeting second, the weight of countless forgotten battlefields pressing down through the years. He set the helmet aside, exhaling a breath that felt older. Rex watched from the doorway, his breathing low and rhythmic. Owen glanced at him, their gazes locking in a language older than words. "We won't leave," Owen said quietly, voice nearly swallowed by the room's hollow stillness. "But we won't join them either. This is our line. No further." Outside the noises multiplied. Metal shrieks echoed across the flats, distant armor grinding, the clatter of weapons against hard earth, alien roars cutting through the dusk. Gar's clan began moving supplies, throwing up makeshift barricades and driving stakes into the dusty ground. In the fading light, the defenders looked like pale insects huddling beneath an incoming boot. Owen carried a few crates to the edge of his property, stacking them in a neat line along the inside of the fence. He slipped out small sensor pods, adjusting their angles and checking their battery levels. He laid out 3 canisters of sonic repellent, designed to scatter the quarry beasts if they panicked. Everything was arranged with the quiet care of a man who had repeated these steps 1,000 times before, in 1,000 different places that all felt like nightmares. Rex trailed him step for step, his claws whispering across the dirt, muscles tensed beneath the thick hide. Every now and then he paused, head snapping toward the horizon as if listening to sounds Owen could not hear. When Owen finished, he set a hand on Rex's side, fingers pressing against the warmth there. "Stay close," Owen said. Rex responded with a gentle nudge, his massive head bumping against Owen's hip, a silent vow stronger than any spoken oath. As the sky darkened into a smear of starlight and ink, Gar's fires rose high across the field. Their silhouettes moved frantically, building new watchtowers and hurling curses into the wind. Owen stood at his fence line, watching them work, the faint glow lighting his impassive face. Gar's bellow drifted on the night air, angry and cracked. "Human. You hide while real warriors bleed." Another voice took up the chant, echoing Gar's fury. A small crowd formed along the fence edge, alien soldiers and villagers alike, torches flaring like angry eyes. Owen didn't respond. He turned back toward the paddock where Rex now paced, each footfall measured, coiled energy wrapped in a sheath of calm. He knew that by dawn the Draven would come. The rumors had the ring of inevitability, they always did. But Owen felt no tremor of fear, no pang of regret for the path he'd chosen. He felt only the slow thunder beneath his hand as he stroked Rex's scales, the steady presence of a creature who had chosen to guard instead of hunt, to protect instead of devour. Above them, the first stars blinked into view, cold and watchful. The air thickened with the promise of coming violence, the fields holding their breath as if bracing for the first scream. Owen rose at last, brushing the dust from his knees. Rex followed, moving in close, a living wall of scale and sinew. Together they walked along the fence one final time, each post a marker of something deeper than territory, a line that divided who Owen had been from who he had become. At the far corner, Owen stopped and looked out at the village fires, the gathering warriors, the distant glow of the Draven scouts inching closer to the settlement's edge. He drew a long, slow breath, the night air cold and sharp in his lungs. "Tomorrow," he murmured, a word too soft for any ear but Rex's. And in the predator's quiet rumble, Owen felt the echo of a promise that would soon be tested under fire and blood. Dawn rose slow and heavy, as if the sun itself hesitated to look down on what was coming. Pale light spilled across the fields, painting long shadows of half-built barricades and scorched watchtowers. The smell of smoke drifted on the morning wind, thin as a whispered curse. Owen stood at his fence, hat pulled low, eyes narrowed toward the horizon where the Draven forces gathered like a black tide against the land's edge. The first shapes emerged from the fog, towering reptilian figures draped in dark iron plating, their halberds catching stray beams of early light. Their helmets bore vicious crests, tusk-like protrusions jutting forward as if eager to pierce flesh. Behind them, smaller foot soldiers carried shock lances and net cannons, their steps in eerie unison, an army breathing as a single organism. Gar's defensive line trembled. Through the haze, his voice roared above the clanging and shuffling, rallying his men, hurling threats into the void. Yet each shout carried a crack of desperation. Virik hovered close to the rear ranks, eyes darting, hands twitching at the hem of his robe as if trying to vanish into the ground itself. Rex shifted beside Owen, head lowered, breath deep and slow, the rumble in his chest like distant thunder rolling over an empty plain. Owen kept a hand steady on the great beast's flank, feeling the quiver of taut muscle beneath. The predator's eyes flicked across the oncoming horde, calm and deliberate, every breath measured like the ticking of a war drum. A shriek split the air, sharp and keening. One of the Draven war leaders, taller than the rest, lifted his halberd and slammed it into the ground. Sparks sprayed up, and the front ranks surged forward, a living wall of scaled rage. The earth shook under the pounding advance, loose stones skittering away like frightened insects. Gar bellowed, charging to meet them. His warriors followed, blades raised, voices hoarse from fear disguised as valor. Virik ducked behind a supply cart, eyes wide, mouthing silent prayers to gods that did not hear. The two lines clashed in a snarl of metal and screams, bodies crumpling under the brutal force of claw and steel. Owen watched, jaw set. Rex stood still, tail twitching once, twice, then still again. The chaos unfolded like a grim theater, bright arcs of plasma slicing through the dust clouds, alien roars blending into an endless roar. Gar fought at the center, swinging his blade in wide, savage arcs. For a moment he seemed unstoppable, but as the Draven ranks pressed harder, his steps faltered, each swing slower than the last. In the gaps between lunges, Gar's gaze locked on Owen, burning with a mixture of accusation and pleading. Owen did not move. Gar turned away with a final snarl, driving his blade through one last enemy before a warhammer crushed his helmet in a spray of sparks and bone. Virak scrambled away from the collapsing lines, tripping over broken shields and fallen allies. He crawled through the dust, sobbing, hands clawing at the ground until they found purchase against Owen's fence. He looked up, eyes wet and wild. "Owen, help us. Use the beast. You can stop them." His voice cracked, fingers scraping at the wires. Owen's eyes flickered down to Virak, but his expression did not change. Behind him, Rex rose onto all 6 limbs fully, stretching upward until he towered above the fence like a living fortress. The Draven turned toward this new silhouette, some pausing mid-charge, others roaring challenges in their guttural tongue. Owen clicked his tongue once, sharply. Rex's head snapped forward, yellow eyes narrowing. Another click, then a whistle, high and quick, slicing across the screams and the clash of metal. Rex leapt the fence in a single, effortless motion, landing with a deep boom that shuddered through the ground. Dust billowed up around him as he coiled low, muscles rippling, tail sweeping in a slow, menacing arc. The first Draven who charged him swung a halberd at Rex's skull. With a single sidestep, Rex slipped past and slammed his tusked snout into the warrior's chest. Armor buckled like paper, bones splintered, and the Draven flew backward into 2 more soldiers. A second group tried to flank him. Rex lunged, pivoting so fast his movement blurred. His tail whipped out, catching one Draven by the legs and flinging him into the sky, a spiraling silhouette that vanished behind the barricades. The rest stumbled, weapons raised, but Rex circled them, herding them as if they were terrified cattle. The Draven formation broke. Soldiers scattered, colliding into each other, some dropping weapons to claw at the dirt in a panicked retreat. Rex did not kill mindlessly. He corralled them, shoving them into tight bunches where they could no longer swing their blades, isolating pockets of fighters and forcing them down like a shepherd penning stray sheep. Owen climbed the fence slowly, resting his rifle across his shoulder but never lifting it to aim. He advanced behind Rex, steps unhurried, each one echoing a calm certainty. Virak crawled backward in the dust, mouth open in a silent scream, eyes locked on Rex as though he had seen a god step from the shadows. Owen finally stopped, raising a single hand. Rex halted instantly, claws half buried in the soil, head turning slightly to watch his companion. Owen lowered his hand, and the predator relaxed, shifting to loom over the huddled Draven. The remaining Draven warriors knelt or collapsed in exhaustion, staring at the ground, weapons dropped in trembling fingers. Their war leader staggered forward, helmet cracked, blood trickling down his fanged chin. He raised his halberd as if to roar one final defiance, but Rex snapped forward, jaws closing over the blade and twisting it free. The metal bent and snapped like brittle twigs. The war leader froze, eyes bulging. Then he dropped to his knees, lowering his head, spine trembling under the weight of utter defeat. Owen stepped closer, stopping at the leader's side. He reached out, fingers brushing the top of the Draven's helmet, then let his hand fall away. His voice was low, almost gentle. "Take your wounded," he said. "Leave this place. Tell them what you saw." The war leader lifted his eyes, confusion and terror mixing in equal measure. Slowly he nodded, then shuffled back to his warriors, rallying them with broken gestures. The Draven began to withdraw, limping, dragging each other through the mud and shattered earth. Virak tried to stand, legs quivering. Owen turned his gaze on him, and Virak shrank, arms curling around his head. Owen stepped past without a word. Rex prowled forward, pausing beside Owen. The great predator lowered his head again, brushing against Owen's arm like a dog asking for praise. Owen laid a hand on the broad skull, feeling the warmth radiating through the thick scales. "It's over for today," Owen murmured, voice nearly lost beneath the soft rustle of the breeze. Rex gave a low, contented rumble, turning to watch the departing Draven, eyes still sharp, muscles still coiled under his hide. In the silence that followed, the field stood broken and scorched, yet beneath the smoke and ruin, a kind of fragile order pulsed, a heartbeat that spoke of survival rather than conquest. Owen glanced around the charred barricades and the sprawled shapes of alien dead, then toward the distant settlement beyond. In the empty space where Gar once roared, only echoes remained. The warrior's defiance had bled into the soil, swallowed by the same dust that now carried the draven away. Owen knelt to retrieve a loose coil of wire from the ground, his hand steady despite the carnage around him. Rex watched, his tail curling, breathing deep and measured. When Owen stood again, the first true sunlight pierced the thinning smoke, revealing the torn fields, the scattered herds, the broken remnants of war. Owen adjusted his hat, eyes steady beneath the brim. Together, man and beast turned toward the paddock, moving as one shape against the raw morning. The land was not yet healed, but it remained, a battered line against the endless dark. And somewhere behind them Viric's thin, broken sobs drifted upward, vanishing into the new day. The sun climbed slow and merciless above the ravaged fields, laying bare every scorch mark, every splintered barricade, every blood-dark stain on the soil. Smoke drifted in thin, curling ribbons, rising from smoldering husks of weapons and armor. The air reeked of scorched oil, burnt fur, and the sharp copper tang of blood. Owen stood silent at the edge of the paddock, hat in hand, head bowed as though in prayer. His eyes moved over the land like a slow tide, cataloging each ruin and each stubborn sign of life that clung to the broken earth. Rex prowled nearby, his 6 limbs moving in smooth, deliberate arcs, each step planting with the quiet certainty of a king crossing his throne room. He sniffed at the blackened ground, pausing here and there to nudge aside a fallen helmet or peer into the wreckage of a collapsed cart. Whenever he caught Owen's eye, he stilled as though seeking permission or reassurance. Owen finally raised his head. His face bore new creases, old scars lit under the sharp morning light. He set his hat back on and exhaled, a slow, shuddering breath that seemed to push years off his shoulders and settle them into the dust. Movement caught his eye. Near the fence line, Viric crawled out from beneath a collapsed supply shed. His robes were torn and matted with soot, his eyes wide and raw with terror. He staggered upright, taking 2 shaking steps before collapsing to his knees, hands raised in a pathetic plea. "Mercy. Owen, please." His voice cracked into a rasp, each word clawing at the air like a dying animal. Owen regarded him coolly, expression unreadable. He took a step forward, boots crunching over splinters and spent cartridges. Rex shadowed him closely, every motion echoing Owen's quiet authority. Viric let out a thin wail, flinching backward so hard he fell onto his spine, arms raised to shield his face. I was wrong. You saved us. The monster. No, not a monster," he babbled on, tears cutting pale lines through the ash on his cheeks. Owen stopped a few feet away. His shadow fell across Viric like a descending blade. He studied the trembling alien for a long moment, gaze drifting over the shreds of dignity still clinging to Viric's frame. "You laughed," Owen said, voice low and even. "You mocked. You called him a monster, called me a coward." Viric whimpered, nodding frantically. Yes. I was blind, foolish. Please, human, I have nothing left. Spare me." Rex moved closer, lowering his massive head until his breath washed hot over Viric's face. The alien shrieked, collapsing fully into the dirt, fingers clawing for purchase in the loose soil. Owen reached out and set a hand on Rex's skull, fingers curling into the thick scales. The predator stilled at once, eyes locking on Owen's as though waiting for the next move in a private dance only they knew. "He's not a weapon," Owen said quietly, almost to himself. "He's not a trophy. He chose me same way I chose this land." Viric sobbed into the dirt. Owen let go of Rex, stepped closer and crouched. His eyes met Viric's, the gray depths reflecting the smoke-wreathed sky above them. "Leave," Owen said, each syllable cutting clean. "Tell your people. Tell every settlement. This line stays. No one crosses. You understand?" Viric's head bobbed up and down like a broken doll's. He stumbled to his feet, staggered backward, then turned and fled toward the distant road, his sobs trailing after him in the wind. Owen rose slowly, shoulders rolling back. He looked out over the fields, where the quarry beasts now wandered hesitantly, sniffing at burnt tufts of grass. Some had found quiet pools of shade, others nibbled at the sparse greenery. Life persistent as ever. Rex circled back toward Owen, stopping just in front of him, body relaxed but eyes still sharp. Owen reached out again, palm meeting the warm scales. A soft, resonant purr rumbled from Rex's throat, vibrating up Owen's arm and into his chest. "You did good," Owen murmured. "Better than I deserved." The predator pressed closer, almost a gentle nudge, a reminder that they were still here together after the storm. Owen turned, eyes sweeping across the distant skyline. Faint smoke trails from retreating Draven rose like thin, accusing fingers. Word would spread fast. The human who did not run, the human whose so-called monster herded death itself into submission. The settlement, now silent and shattered, would rise again if the survivors chose to return. Or it would crumble, leaving only dust and rumors. Owen didn't care either way. His world began and ended at the edge of his fences. Beyond them, the stars could burn or freeze, it mattered little. He moved along the perimeter, checking each post, each wire. His hands worked automatically, every twist of his wrist a meditation. Rex followed at his side, occasionally stopping to sniff or listen, his heavy tail leaving deep grooves in the earth. At the corner post where he always paused, Owen stood for a long time. He rested one hand on the rough wood, eyes distant. Memories flickered across his face, the old unit emblem, the crushed helmets, the young soldiers who called him captain once upon a galaxy. "I thought I was done fighting," he said to the wind. Rex's head tilted slightly as if pondering the words. Owen smiled, faint and fleeting. "Guess we don't always get what we think we want." The predator's low hum answered, a vibration deeper than words. Hours passed as they worked. Owen rebuilt a water trough, coaxed the quarry beasts closer with gentle whistles, even replaced a scorched section of fencing with old planks stacked in the barn. Rex guarded the edges, tail swaying in slow arcs, each movement a silent warning to the world beyond. As dusk slid down the sky in heavy purple folds, Owen returned to the porch. He sank into his chair, boots caked with ash and soil, chest rising and falling in quiet rhythm. Rex settled nearby, curling around the base of the steps, golden eyes half-lidded but watchful. For a while neither moved. Crickets sang from the tall grass, a few brave quarry beasts ventured near the troughs, and somewhere far off, a lone scout drone word passed, ignoring them completely. Owen glanced down at Rex, who watched him back with the same patient calm. "You know," Owen said, voice rough, "they'll talk about today. Twisted into 1,000 lies. Make me a warlord or a devil or a fool." Rex blinked, unbothered. Owen chuckled softly, the sound unexpected even to his own ears. "Let them talk," he said, leaning back in the creaking chair. "We've got fences to mend tomorrow." Rex's tail tapped once against the porch, a gentle echo of agreement. Above them, stars began to prick the darkening sky, each point a cold fire in the vastness beyond. The fence line glimmered faintly under the moon's first thin breath, a silver thread tying the farm to the horizon. Owen closed his eyes, felt the breeze against his skin, and let the sounds of the land seep into his bones. Each creak of wood, each distant rustle, each low breath from the predator at his feet, all pieces of a life he had claimed inch by inch, claw mark by claw mark. He did not need medals. He did not want parades. He had a quiet patch of soil, a few stubborn animals, and a guardian who had chosen him above the wilds. Tomorrow would bring more laughter, more scorn, more rumors carried on merchant ships and trader routes. The galaxy would keep spinning, loud and blind. But here, on this battered strip of earth, a line had been drawn and held. As the final warmth of the day bled away, Owen's breathing slowed, the last edges of old battle tension draining from his frame. Rex rose once to nuzzle his arm, then settled again, body coiled like a living fortress against the porch. They would face tomorrow the same way they faced today. Together. Without apology, without fear. And in the dark, as the wind whispered through the fields and stars slid across the black, a single unspoken promise shone between them, bright and defiant as any war banner ever raised.